Welcome back, everybody. So since I made the video on the review of the HP Victus, I have done a few other shorts to show changing GPUs, changing the CPU cooler, and adding a vent to this little side panel to help with ventilation. But the number one question I always get asked is, can I swap this PC into a normal gaming PC case? Now, I constantly tell people for about $300, you can get the 4 main components that it requires to end up swapping this over. Those 4 components that in the original HP Victus case are all proprietary, are going to be the motherboard due to the USB placement and the way that it installs inside the actual case itself. The power supply that has very strict and very direct connectors for this motherboard. Like I mentioned with the case, the motherboard and case kind of go hand in hand, so you have to change out that case and the motherboard itself. And since that motherboard is more of a Intel style pattern for the cooler itself, you would obviously have to get a CPU cooler that would match your AMD motherboard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swap everything out, and later on in the video, I'm gonna have a conclusion on whether or not I would recommend doing this or not. So stay tuned, let's go ahead and swap this stuff out. Always remember, every time you're messing with an AMD CPU, you have this retention arm right here on the side. Lift that up, just pull it straight out. Like I said, these are the pins that you can potentially damage if you are, if you drop one of these CPUs or anything like that. So you always have to make sure you're careful with one of these. If you do bend one of these, I do have a short on how to fix these and a recommended way to make sure you clean these things properly. All right, so the last usable piece that we're going to use on this is these sticks of RAM. All you have to do is, some motherboards won't have it on the bottom, these HPs will, but if you've got your other gaming PC, it may not. All you have to do is push these tabs out and that stick of RAM will push itself right out. All right, so I want to go over very quickly, before I go over a parts list of everything that I was able to get, I want to go over how to properly insert your CPU. If you ever are inserting one of these, look for this gold triangle. The motherboard will have a similar dot that will show you exactly which orientation the CPU, whether it's Intel or AMD. Remember, just open up that arm, and all you want to do is set that on there and it will fall into place. Wiggle it to make sure that all the pins are lined up, but do not force this CPU down. Once it's on there, put that retaining arm and then that CPU will be locked down. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and install our RAM. Always check the motherboard to make sure you have the right DIMM slots filled, which this is gonna be the 2nd and 4th. Make sure you line that notch up with the notch in the actual DIMM slot. Slide that in, and sometimes RAM can feel like it's a little tough, but once you hear those clicks and you see that retaining arm closed, then you are good to go. All right, so now before I go ahead and throw the motherboard into the case itself, I'm gonna go over a quick little parts list and kind of what to expect whenever it comes to cost to do something like this. Now, this case that I have is actually featured in 2 other videos, one being that $90 DIY water cooling kit, and the other being the $500 Amazon mistake. This is a B-Gears case. This thing can be found for about $60 without fans, $90 with fans. So it is a little high. I wouldn't recommend necessarily buying this case with the fans due to the fact that you can get something like the Deep Cool CH510 that I'd already used that you can get for $90. Now the thing is, you have to make sure it's either going to have fans or not. So I would recommend trying to find one like the Sama cases that come with ARGB fans for $60 if you wanted to do that and keep it cheap. Another thing is, this is not the motherboard I'm using, but this is a motherboard that I actually have for another PC that I built. I did pick this up for around $90. I will post the link in the description below for all of these parts. And primarily this thing does have Wi-Fi. It is good enough and recent enough for the 5000 series CPUs. So you can use that as well, and it is an MATX motherboard. So if you have a smaller case that you found for a little bit cheaper, you don't require, you can use something like this to fit in one of the smaller cases. Now, this motherboard is just one of the MSI MPG B550 Gaming Plus motherboards that you can just pick up off the shelf at Best Buy. So it's very easy, very common, something you can get just if you were kind of browsing around. And really everything that you see here can be found at Best Buy. They have plenty of NZXT cases. They have these motherboards. You can also find, if not this cooler that I'm using, you can also find the Cooler Master, I believe it's the 212 that they normally always have in stock. And just any power supply will work. You don't have to be worried about a certain type of power supply. Now, let's go ahead and get into the assembly, and then I'll kind of break down everything as to why I would or would not recommend this. So let's knock it out. All right, so now that we've got everything removed from the old case into the new one, everything is buttoned up, ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and see if everything's all good. So we do have power. All of our fans are spinning, everything's good. Let's see if we get an output. All right, so there we go. So now, since we are using that same SSD, even though we swapped that motherboard, we already have the operating system on it. So we don't have anything new that we have to do. As you can see, we do still have all of our old files and everything on there. So everything's good to go. We can basically go ahead and start running this thing as it is. Now, I will go ahead and do a temperature check and everything to make sure the CPU cooler is seated and everything's good to go. We will have better airflow because we have better fans, but that heat sink on that RX 6400 is still small. But this is kind of like if you were to just take what was inside of this one and try to transplant it, because if you were to do this swap and then try to upgrade the GPU, you're still going to be adding on to the cost that it takes to go from this to this and then thereon. All right, so there you have it. If you have one of these HP Victus PCs and you want to transplant everything into another case, like I said, it's going to take a case, power supply, motherboard, and a CPU cooler. Now, would I recommend you to do this? If you have an HP Victus and you want better performance, you want a little bit more headroom if it comes to upgrading parts, then yes, I would recommend you do this because you've already spent the initial investment to get this computer. Would I recommend buying one of these computers and then doing this upgrade? Personally, I would not. If you spend around $400 to $500 for this computer and then spend another $200 to $300 to get it to where I'm at right now, then essentially you've got a $700 to $800 PC, and that's still running an RX 6400. So if you decided that you still wanted to add a GPU, you're gonna be around the $1,000 to $1,100 price range. And I personally would recommend just go find a CyberPower PC with a 3060 in it and pay $900, and you would have something that would be able to outperform this thing. So I always appreciate y'all being here. Thank y'all so much to all of y'all that have requested this exact build right here to say, can I do this? Thank y'all for giving me the idea to make this video. And if there are any other things that y'all have questions with, if you would like to see a specific type of video, please let me know below. Thank you for all y'all that like and subscribe the video and share and comment and everything. I really appreciate everything. I try to get back to y'all as quick as I can, but I truly thank y'all. I hope y'all are having a wonderful day, and I hope that I'll see you next time. Take care.